Hey, SE Historian here, and today I have my lovely conversation with Chickenman for you all. For those of you who might not know him, Montana is a StarCraft tournament organizer, caster, streamer, and just an all around great guy. Our conversation went very long, so this one's going to be split into two pieces, with the second one releasing tomorrow. If you've been enjoying my work, be sure to get subscribed, but without further ado, let's jump into my word with Chickenman. So, Chickenman, thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you inviting me. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
no, I've admired your work for a while now, and I think we actually met like briefly at DreamHack with Kwame. I want to say, yeah,
Oh
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, whatever. So many of these brief interactions. You meet 100 people at an event, um, but yeah, no, I think let's go ahead and jump into it. So the customary question I've got into sort of asking people is like, so how'd you first get into StarCraft?
I had friends in college that had played Brood War, and when the StarCraft 2 beta came out, they were super excited about it. I had heard of the game, but I had never been interested to it in playing it. Um, but what really got me hooked is they also watched the esports, right? So they watched GSL, and they were like, "Dude, you got to come over. You got to hang out. We're gonna watch GSL tonight." And I was like, "I don't know what this is." But like, sure, whatever. We're living in the dorms. I go over, I watch GSL. Tasteless comes on. I'm sold. I'm hooked. That's it. From there, I knew it was going to be a part of my life.
That's a pretty crazy story. Like, I feel like I did hear you tell this, but like, it's such an interesting like experience, and it's really similar for like a lot of people, I think, and myself included. With like Day Nine, it was like,
Yep.
I was sort of loosely into StarCraft. Like my friend showed it to me, and I was like, I was really frustrated with it because it was so hard. And I just started watching some Day Nine videos, and I was like, oh no, yeah, like I think this is like my thing now, and it sort of never stopped. Um, but that's really
I
cool
think
to
what
hear.
it is like there's the game, which, I love the game. I think it's a great game, but the community is to me what has always held me into it. That's what keeps me coming back. When Heart of the Swarm came out and I like didn't want to play the game anymore, I still stuck around because of the community. I was still watching streams and watching esports, and like that doesn't happen without the people. And it's really the people that I think has kept me here for this long. There's no other games that I play this much for this long.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like, I feel like we had these collective experiences of being like, "Wow, like this is bad gameplay. This isn't this so funny? Like, wow, did you see how bad this like final was? Like, I feel like we had such a time period like that, or like these like hour and a half long matches. Like, it was terrible, dude. But yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It's like it's the personalities though that kept us entertained, that kept us interested,
Mhm.
whether it was the casters or the content creators, the players, and so on, the passion that they still had, even if the game was sort of screwed.
Yeah, and it was still a lot of fun. And like I remember also you'd mentioned Day 9, watching Day 9's daily number 100. When I first started getting into StarCraft, my friend was like, "You have to watch this video." And so I watched the whole thing, and I'm like crying. And I was like, "Oh my god, this game is like," where all of a sudden I'm like, there's a family involved in this game. And I was
Yeah.
like, I want to be in that family. It's some part of that circle. I want to be involved with that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, interviewing his mom like recently was so surreal. Like, I know I said in the
Yeah.
video, I think it sounds kind of like a vapid statement, but it's the only really real way to describe it. To think back and like the same like those formative moments of like watching that video and being like, oh wow, like this really it can kind of be like more than a game, and like it's cool almost for it to be like more than a game to you.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't know, to just talk to the person that was part of those like stories
Well, I
was
mean, she was
bizarre.
in so many of those
Yeah,
stories. And then like here we are, over a decade later. And it's
yeah.
it's just so cool. Yeah, I can't imagine what that's like. That's super sick.
So what made you want to get started with content creation?
I mean, for me, I've always had a love of like performance. Yeah, I have a college degree in theater, so that kind of idea of performing really anything has always really intrigued me. And even when I first started watching StarCraft esports, I remember thinking, man, it'd be so cool to be a commentator. Like that always intrigued me. And I wish somebody had like told me at 19, like you could just do that actually. You could just do it because I would have
Yeah.
done it. But at the time I was like, oh, I'm not like I'm not that kind of person. I'm not the level that I could do that.
Yeah.
Um but then, years go down the line and I revisit it. I'm getting back into StarCraft. Legacy of the Void came out and I was like, I could just stream. I kind of wanted to play more StarCraft anyways. I was like, if I stream, then it gives me like a reason to want to play more StarCraft, to actually do it instead of just having it be one of the things that I want to do, but I don't ever. So I started streaming really to force myself to play more StarCraft. And it was very successful in that I played a lot more StarCraft and then eventually started commentating, which is exactly as good as I always thought it would be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I really like the sort of, like very pure motives, right? You're just like, yeah, no, I really like StarCraft, and like there's gonna be a reason to like really, sink my teeth into it and get better and have fun with it. So that's awesome. So like you've mentioned like this sort of history of theater and like getting a degree in theater. Like, so have you done any productions like recently, like and sort of community productions you participated in?
It's been a while since I've done any community theater. Uh, I've been looking into it a little bit here in Seattle. Of course, during the pandemic, and there was a couple of years where live theater just wasn't really happening at all. In which case, I was really happy to have my stream to kind of have that still the ability to perform. I'll do like little things like go to karaoke and stand up in front of the crowd at the bar, and that like scratches the itch a little bit of the live performance. But yeah, I'm always interested in working on theater, working on new performance and things like that. It's the one drawback is it's a huge time sink. It's just all of your free time for like months is just going to be rehearsals and then productions. And it's a hard thing to like want to get back into after stepping away from it and having a lot more free time and a lot more time to focus on other things in my life. Oh man, I have to just it's a sacrifice for sure for a few months at the bare minimum.
Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. Like, to commit yourself to learning these lines and dance moves
Hmm.
and like the vibe that the particular production is going for, that sounds tedious.
It can be. I mean, also obviously I love doing it and it's a huge amount of fun. And if I found something here that was like felt like the right thing for me, I would absolutely go like audition for it. Um, yeah, it has been a few years since I moved out of Hawaii. Actually, in 2019 was the last time I performed live.
Yeah, like and it's going to be a lot of work, but like if it's a production that's worth it and something that like really does scratch
Yeah.
that itch for you, yeah, then that makes sense. That's sweet. Hope happens for you. um but so like, okay, in an ideal world, would you be like a pro esports caster or a stage actor?
Oh, I mean that's a hard question. In an ideal world, I'd be able to do both, right? I feel like that's the real
But if you
answer.
if you could
Um,
choose one to make it big in.
I think honestly, I'd probably prefer to be a stage actor. In that case, esports it's like a beautiful thing that combines, my lifelong love of video games with also being able to do live performance. Um, but there is something about stage acting that I think there's a big difference there in that getting to actually bite into like a role is such a satisfying creative thing to do. It really scratches that creative itch that I get to like work on a character and figure out, what are their motivations? Why are they saying these lines? Why does this character decide to suddenly break out into song? If it's a musical or something like that. It's such a satisfying creative experience. And then performing live on stage in front of an audience, there is absolutely nothing like that. And I've never done that with esports commentary, but I think it would feel very different if you're, commentating, say, live at an event or something like that. I'm sure there's still like this really exciting feeling, but I haven't ever experienced in my life anything like performing a role live on stage in front of an audience.
Well, yeah, I would imagine that like an esports caster gives voice to the spectacle, right? Like the spectacle
Mm.
is the match, but like if you're a stage actor, you're the spectacle, right? Like you give voice to it yourself or not, depending on what you're doing, right? But yeah, I mean that sounds really awesome though. I've never really experienced anything like that, but I've done like some maybe like open mic stand up stuff like that,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's really fun. But like so I do hear you though. So switching gears over to like some more like StarCraft related stuff. Like how'd you first get associated with Psystorm?
Oh, so KJ, who runs Storm, reached out to me a few years ago to work on a very specific project, actually, that we worked on for a while, which was like an esports news project. And so I worked on that with them for uh, maybe 6 months or 8 months or so. And it unfortunately never really took off. We never really got anywhere too far with it, but it was really nice to work with them. And I've always admired Storm. They're a North American team, and they've been around a long time. Had some great players on there over the years, and um, at this point, I think it just feels like we're all kind of friends. When we go to the events, I go hang out with KJ and whoever else is there from Storm, and just a nice group.
So it's sort of an informal connection now.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, we don't have any active events going on or anything like that. But if Storm was to put something on, I'm sure I'd be on the list of people to call.
Yeah, yeah, cool. I so what inspired you to first get started with KSL?
I mean, I love putting on tournaments in a way. Running tournaments can be very difficult, but being uh, I don't. It's hard to describe. Like the active adminning of a tournament can be pretty stressful, but at the same time, getting to do something for the StarCraft community in that way is always a lot of fun. So I've loved putting on like weekly tournaments, and if I get a chance to a bigger tournament, it's just really nice to have kind of that control over it. I'll cast like ESL Open Cups or qualifiers or whatever, but it's a very different experience to have your own tournament. You're running it. You got to make the decisions, but also you have control over what's happening within it, and you're kind of giving that all your time and energy and effort to the StarCraft community, and the players are usually very thankful for it because any opportunities they get, really just helps them. And then, of course, when the announcement earlier this year that GSL was going to get a big funding cut and the Korean scene was just getting absolutely nailed.
Yeah.
I was in a group chat with a handful of people, Dave Testa and a few other people. We had talked about putting together tournaments. And at the time, it was kind of idle chit chat, right? It was like, hey, we could all put in so much money and then maybe we can crowdfund some and here's some ideas. And then the moment the news came out, GSL got hit, I typed in chat. I was like, guys, we need to do something for Korea. Like, let's just do whatever it is, some sort of tournament for that region, and we settled on the weekly. And we've gotten a lot of support from the community. I think the community in general has been just hugely supportive in the kind of post Blizzard prize pool era, helping to support obviously our tournament, but GSL has reached out and they have Patreon support as well. And then Home Story Cup is still doing fantastic. I mean, the community's really, really stepped it up, and
Yeah.
they just had the like tiny little Home Story Cup too, which was super fun.
Yeah. That was a really interesting little thing, but definitely a lot of fun as well. The same feel as all of Take stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so were you surprised at like the level of support you saw like with KSL initially?
Um, I don't know if I was surprised. I was really happy. The hardest part a lot of times is actually getting the word out to enough of the community. The StarCraft community has like just long been over supportive compared to pretty much any other game out there. I think the StarCraft community is so concentrated that everybody is willing to put their money where their mouth is, and it like for the audiences of streamers that have more subs than they do average viewers by like 3 to 1 sometimes. That doesn't happen in other communities. We're kind of we're very unique in that way. Other communities, you have 10,000 viewers, you might have 1,000 subs. You know, like it's a 10 to 1. In our community, it's like the opposite. You could have like 100 average viewers and just be crushing it and
Yeah.
making your money. And I think that's something really special. So I was really worried about making sure we could get the word out to enough people, but also, you know, the name behind it is a lot of it too. And a lot of times people would look and be like, oh, I have no idea who's running this tournament. I don't want to support something where I'm like, you know, who's these people that are running it, right? If Wardy puts an event on and he's like, hey, I'm crowdfunding for this event, everybody knows who the hell Wardy is.
Yeah.
But, you know, if people look and they're like, Chickenman, who the hell is this guy? I don't want to put, you know, $20 a month in. Who knows what he's going to do with it? But I was just really, really happy that people were willing to put that on the line and make it happen. And a lot of the players have been, again, really thankful for that. A lot of the Korean players were, I think, really worried when the GSL prize pool dipped pretty significantly. But they've had a lot of other avenues, and I'm just happy to be able to be part of the reason we still get great Korean matches.
No, most definitely, man. It was something I was so happy to see, like especially like I as a big fan of Korean StarCraft felt so gutted after that GSL
Yeah,
announcement. It was like, wow, like Korean StarCraft is truly dead. Like
yeah.
these are the death throes of it. You know, this is this year's probably going to be like sort of a victory lap. And that's it, you know. And that's, you know, something that like I was ready to live with, frankly. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like your tournament and the success of the crowdfunding honestly is maybe part of why Africa decided to like give it a go, because like they had never done
Yeah.
anything like that before, you know. And then I didn't even think it would be something that they considered. Like the fact that they ended up raising the amount that they did, and like not only that, but reverse the decision to have the online matches and do everything in studio again. Like I actually think it's genuinely to a certain degree tied to your decision to put on KSL.
I mean, I would love to think that they saw, you know, support coming from the community,
Yeah,
and whether it was towards us or just in general, like I think there was a lot of outpouring of support at that time. And
yeah.
I like to think that they saw that, somebody saw that, right? Because I think you're right. I think probably it never would have crossed their mind to try to crowdsource. And there was one person who had the ear of somebody in charge and
Look
said,
at this.
"Hey, you
Yeah,
guys,
like
you guys should look at this because
yeah.
it's happening.
Pigsty,
There's
like
people out there."
Wardy raised what, like 20,000, 25,000, more than that even, like quickly.
Yeah,
And then KSL did what it did, and so like yeah, for sure, I think that's what it is. Like at the end of the day, like I think somebody told somebody like, hey, listen, these people put their money where their mouth is. Like, look at it. Like this is there is money here. And
yeah.
it's crazy to me that it took them 20 years. Like it feels like, you know, and I mean that's an exaggeration, but 13 years to like realize that like non-Koreans love StarCraft, you know, just as much as Koreans. And in the case of StarCraft too, more. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because yeah, GSL has always been that, like, you get the Korean ads on it and it
Yeah.
feels just, it's Korean content that we just happen to watch.
Yep.
And that's how it's felt the whole time. And I think, you know, in 2010 that was pretty accurate, but these days I'm sure they have you know, a huge viewing outside of Korea. And obviously we see the numbers, watch the YouTube VODs, and
I think by 2012, 2013, like the foreign audience was bigger for StarCraft 2. And by
yeah.
2015,
Yeah.
certainly. And like yeah, it's crazy to me that they were I get it, like it's a complex like business situation. I spoke to a couple different people about this sort of conceptually, and the general consensus seems to be that like it was they don't have like corporate business contacts with these foreign entities, and like I don't know how much I necessarily believe that. To me it sounds like over all those years somebody could have put in the effort to make contacts.
Yeah.
Like some things that kind of blew my mind with the GSL, right? Like they were sponsored by like LG Korea as opposed to like LG International. Like
Yeah.
like think about how much bigger the budget would have been if if they were using the foreign numbers as opposed to the Korean numbers. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like they were literally taking like the weakest part of their business and using it to market themselves for many years. Obviously, in the first few years, the money rolled in because the audiences in Korea were gigantic, but like that dwindled in like 4 years.
Yeah, it's really interesting too that you mentioned that LG in particular, right? They're an international company. It's not like a specific Korean company that would only care about the Korean audience.
And
You would
they're
think they'd be like, "Oh, look at all these people that
Yeah.
watch this, that
Like
would see
I don't know
this."
the numbers, but I'm 99% sure that LG International does more business than LG Domestic, right? Like LG is the world's largest producer of displays for monitors and televisions, like, and all the other stuff they do and appliances, and so their cell phones sort of bite the dust internationally, but like that's neither here nor there. But yeah, like they do tons of business like internationally, and so it's very strange to me. And other things too, like why were there never channels set up to sort of sell us stuff in America like that, like Korean products like Pocari Sweat, Hot Six, like those of us who live in near large metropolitan hubs all over Europe and America had access to that sort of stuff, you know? I
Yeah.
remember going to Costco and seeing CJ like dumplings and stuff, and thinking like, why can't I support CJ Entis, the team, by buying these dumplings? Like, there should be something here, you know? I should be able to
Yeah.
mail them 100 box tops and they give Hero like a high five or whatever.
I mean, I've thought about that too. And I think the StarCraft community in general probably has one of the highest, like, I don't
Fruit,
know
you know?
exactly how to put it, but like
Yeah.
personally, if I'm looking to buy something and I'm like, oh, they supported StarCraft, even if it's been 10 years, I am way more likely to go with them,
Yeah.
even to this day. I was looking for a mouse pad recently and I saw like a Steel Series one, and I was like, I don't even remember who they sponsored anymore. But they did something StarCraft, so they get my $10 for that mouse pad. Like, why is that? I don't know. But I feel like we all do that to some degree. And if we had the opportunity to, yeah, buy something specific like, oh, order your Hot Six online and get it shipped to you and take a picture with it
Yeah.
and we'll put it up during the GSL, I'd be like, oh, I
Yeah.
need a 12 pack. Let's go.
I'll pay 5 times retail. Like I
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah.
care. Like if you tell me that, like if you tell me one out of $10 goes to the GSL, I'll buy $500 of soda from you. Like, just please take it. Like, yeah, no. There's so many like things I didn't understand about that sort of thing. But whatever. The history kind of is what it is at this point. Like, I'm glad that they at least finally woke up to it. And
Yeah.
I think it is truly in part from your work and others like Wardy and Pig. So that's awesome, man. It's cool to be, if you're in a conversation with Wardy and Pig, you did something right, you know.
I'm just glad to be like over in the same the corner of that sentence,
No,
just like
but it's not
nearby.
it's
Be
not
like the
even the
period.
corner. It's like, frankly, it was like, like I do also think, like, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the GSL crowdfunding ate a little bit of the KSL crowdfunding. Like, it seems like did it drift down a bit over time?
Um, it did. So it did drift down over a bit, but I'll be honest, it was. I don't think it was related to that at all.
Okay.
Um, the drift down has been entirely from we had a few like big backers at the beginning, the
Okay.
people who were in from the start, and they were like, "Yes, we'll get this going." But it was like not a sustainable thing for them. It
Yeah.
was let's get a few, a couple of months in, and so the dwindle has been almost entirely that. The actual amount of backers has stayed pretty consistent the whole
Oh,
time,
that's sweet.
which has been really nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
people, they put their money in and they leave it.
Yeah. No. It's I've been in there. I've been in there.
Yeah, we
It's something.
appreciate it.
It's something I would hate to see go away. Like, it was such a, especially when it came out prior to the GSL crowdfunding, but even now, still, of course, it's just like an extra ESL Cup, for the Koreans. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that must mean so much to them.
I like to think so. And of course, it's in a way too modeled on a Lima League,
Of
who
course, yeah,
they came before us, but
yeah,
yeah, I it was kind of the idea too. I was like, hey, they did this. The audience is kind of familiar with this concept of like having the Patreon, and that keeps the tournament running, and we kind of just went with that same idea. And I think a lot of the players too, it helped them that it was already a thing that had happened. They already got it. And I think a lot of players are like, they're usually down to play in tournaments, but they don't always know what's going on, and they've been really really welcoming about it. They're joining the Discord and stuff like that, which I think a lot of players are hesitant to do.
no, that's fantastic, man. So what would you say have been like what were the biggest challenges with developing KSL?
um I mean, I think we had kind of a group, especially at the beginning. We had a group of people who we were all kind of brainstorming and coming up with ideas, and I think it became difficult to like figure out which direction we were going with some of it. I At some point, I'll be honest, I just kind of made decisions, and I was like, okay, we're just quabbling over like details. We just have to push forward and make something happen. Um, but honestly, it's been a pretty smooth process. It's not incredibly difficult to run weekly events, and obviously I love getting to cast it every week. So I'm there every week. If I was just adminning it, if I was just running it, it might be a little more difficult. But because I want to be there every week, I want to make sure the tournament gets off because I'm going to be casting it. I want to cover it too. I want to see these games.
Yeah,
It makes it a lot easier to just do the running of it happens kind of by the wayside.
yeah, no, yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. I would say I kind of feel the same way about my content production. Like, because sometimes I look at it, and I'm like, oh wow, I just like did this for 3 hours. Like that was a lot of time. And but yeah, it just feels like okay, well, like, but I'm gonna make I need to make the video, so like, oh, this is just sort of part of it. And yeah, it doesn't feel like too much work.
I mean, I think that's ideally how you'd want to feel about this kind of content, right? Like if you have to push yourself and force yourself to do it and force yourself to turn on the stream or start the recording or whatever it is, maybe that's not the direction you need to be going in. And sometimes it's good to push through that like initial phase of like, oh, I don't want to do this. Sometimes before a cast, I'll be like, man, I just want to go to sleep.
Yeah,
But then, halfway through the 12th game of the night, I'm like stoked, I'm pumped.
yeah.
Because yeah, I'm just pushing through that initial phase, and that's, I think, the ideal way is to just enjoy what you're doing, and whatever the content is almost secondary to the fact that yeah, you're having fun, you're there because you want to be there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it comes across pretty clearly generally whether or not a person that's trying to entertain you wants to be there or not.
Yeah.
Um but what would you say is like a long-term goal you have for KSL?
I mean, we just had the SummerSlam, big tournament. We had like a lot of kind of extra funds that we had gathered, and I was like, just we wanted to put it into a big tournament. That was a ton of fun. I'd love to, keep things like that going. Um, Obviously, there's a big thought too about, I guess, having kind of like the ESL Open Cups. Something for each region, something Europe based, America's based, and uh, that was actually so one of the stipulations for getting ESL points in general, because we had looked into that for KSL, was they needed something that was not like region locked, essentially. So it needed to be fair for all the regions. So I think that would be super cool as well, to expand and have multiple different events going on.
Do you
Um,
think you would have to crowdfund to do that, or do you think that there might be other ways to like achieve that?
there certainly could be other ways to achieve that. I would definitely be interested in looking into like, getting brand sponsorships and things like that. Right now, we're obviously extremely grassroots. It is just the straight up crowdfunding, people who just love StarCraft and want to support StarCraft, and that's what we're doing it for.
Yeah.
And but yeah, to expand, I think we probably would need to look into more sponsorships and things of that nature, which is something I really don't have a lot of experience with. So I have to reach out. That would be a good time to talk to SciStorm, actually.
Yeah, yeah,
My team. I'm sure there'd be a lot of connections there, people who understand that side of the business.
for sure.
But that really is getting into business rather than just kind of a. It would make it a lot more complicated, certainly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, it makes sense. Then you have like obligations to fulfill. It's no longer just like your passion project.
Yeah.
So it seems like you've started to dedicate a lot more time to casting as opposed to just like playing games on stream. Is that like an accurate description?
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, when I moved to Seattle, it's fairly expensive here to live. It's not like super expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. So I knew I was gonna have to pick up a job. Streaming wasn't gonna be able to support me full time. And so it was kind of like I had to focus on what I wanted to do. It's just like we were talking about with the content a minute ago, right? Before I would stream and play StarCraft or even other games, there's like this feeling I'm like, I do not want to turn the stream on. I don't want to sit here for the next 6 hours and play games. I was like, well, if I don't want to do that, I need to just not do it, you know? But of course, I don't want to leave the StarCraft community. I still love being a part of it, and I don't want to stop streaming permanently. So let me find what it is that I like really want to do. And it was casting. So I said, like, all right, well, if I'm only going to stream once a week, I want it to be casting. And I just want to focus on that commentary, and having the KSL is like a perfect thing to make sure I hit that at least once a week I'm online and I'm just doing exactly what I want to be doing.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's been. I mean, it has been working out really well. It seems like.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the KSL's still going and we're still cruising along.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So, what are your opinions on like the state of balance in StarCraft right now?
I mean, it's a fairly complex question. I think the game is honestly in one of the best states it's ever been. I feel like as we've gotten to this point, we have narrowed down the balance where we're really, really close. I don't think there really is ever a scenario where the game, any kind of game like this, could just be perfectly balanced. But I think we're about as close as we've ever been, at least in the last few years. There's been a couple of little patches here and there, but I think over the last few years, this game has felt extremely balanced. Um, and only recently have I heard so many inklings of people saying it's unbalanced. But as always, I see them from all sides. I see. I literally saw a tweet today that was like, Terran needs more power, and I was like, what are we doing here though?
Yeah,
I was like, where is this patch that Terran really desperately needs? And it's really hard to kind of figure through and wade through all of the bullshit when it comes to talking about balance, because everybody has their ideas and most of them are completely wrong. And so it's really difficult. You start just having to look at the results and at the gameplay of the top level, because if you start getting really muddled in the lower leagues, I mean, at this point, I don't think we're likely to see changes that are big enough to shake up, all the lower leagues. As somebody who's played a very good amount of StarCraft, and in particular, I played all three races when I did play a lot. I would play each race almost to the exact same amount. My MMR was like dead even on all of them. And I don't
yeah,
know, when people complain about balance, I'm like, have you played as many Zerg games as you have Terran games? Have you played as many Protoss games as you have Zerg games? The answer is never yes.
yeah. No, I'm on the same page with you in a lot of ways. I think that like um there were so many points in the history of the game where balance was so busted, and like we're absolutely not in a period like that, you know. Like I think we do see like a lot of Zerg success at the top level, and like that's sort of obvious. So
Hmm.
I do think that there are certain mechanics of the game, like things that are just never going to get fixed, that can't get fixed, that are integral to like the designs of the races. Like
Yeah,
creep as a mechanic is so powerful. Like the fact that they have this sort of auto vision, and the speed boost is crazy. Like it makes it like it's such a defensive advantage. And the
yeah,
way that queens function, same thing. Such a defensive advantage. This unit that serves such a great dual purpose. So like, but that being said, like I think Terran's also in a great spot. And like it's funny because going into a lot of these tournaments, we see like parity, like in terms of race representation in GSL and many of these events, and then, but by the time that it's the top eight, there's like maybe one Protoss left,
yeah.
and I'm really like. I'm searching for an answer as to why. I've asked like a bunch of people at this point. Like, it's so weird because when you look at the statistics for lower leagues, like Protoss kind of dominates in some ways.
Yeah.
But then at the top level, like they just fall off. Why do you think that is?
So I'm gonna give you my opinion. The number one answer why we don't see more protests at the high level is they're not playing. So like legitimately, Max Pex doesn't go to live events, right? He is arguably the best protest in the world and has
Yeah,
been for the last year with Hero, right? They kind of flip flop that. But it's them. It's him and Hero. And he just doesn't go to live. Imagine if Rayner didn't go to live events.
yeah,
How many less Zerg would there be? How many tournaments has he won that Zerg might not have won?
sure, a
Right? All of
bunch.
a
Yeah,
sudden, it changes the landscape. But not only that, of course, we have a few protests that have gone to military service more recently. We don't have Zest or Trap, both high level champions, finalists, GSL winners. Like these are the top guys.
yeah,
They're not here right
yeah.
now.
Stats just came back. He's
So
still at a lower level.
Stats is he's working his way back up.
Yeah,
He just got into GSL. I'm
yeah,
excited to see what he can bring,
yeah,
but he's definitely not back up to that level. And yeah, he was another tournament contender before he went to his military service. SOS, tournament contender before he went to his military service. And he's been back for a little while, but we haven't seen him rise up to that level
he
again
almost qualified
because
for GSL.
it's a hard thing to do. Yeah. And I would love, oh my God, you have no idea how much I'd love to see SOS get back into GSL.
Yeah,
That would make me so happy. The man proxied a Nexus in Bunny's base. Come
he's
on.
he's literally unbelievable, dude. Like, okay, like my first like major exposure, like I had seen him play a couple pro league games prior to that, but like when he played Jadong in the WCS Global Finals, whatever, that was 2013, I want to say.
Oh
Um,
man.
like, dude, he cannon rushed him like 3 out of the 5 games, like, and he destroyed him with it. Like, and Jadong was on this like legendary run where he like he beat Maru in the quarterfinals, and then he beat Deer to go to the finals, with that crazy unburrow play, and he had gotten silver all year long, and it was all culminating to this point. And SOS did LOL, and he cannon rushed him like multiple games in a row and destroyed his dreams. Um,
Well, I think that's another interesting point actually that I hadn't really thought of in this way until you just mentioned it. But the cannon rush, right? At the highest level, the cannon rush pretty much dead.
yeah,
Obviously, you go play a ladder game, it's very much not dead.
yeah,
But at that highest peak level, we don't really see it. And Hero and Max Packs both know how to cannon rush. They
yeah,
are professionals at cannon rushing, but they don't do it, which tells me it's bad. And it's bad because map makers specifically stop making maps that were good for cannon rushing because hey, we all hate it
yeah.
on ladder, but we don't hate it in tournaments,
Yeah,
do
yeah,
we?
it's sick in
We do
tournaments.
not mind watching it in tournaments. But
I
it's
minded it
interesting
in that
how
moment.
we've used maps now
Yeah,
to balance Protoss down. We took a build order away from the highest level Protoss. We took it away. And I feel like we don't talk about that when we talk about the balance of the game, but cannon rushing was historically has won tournaments all
yeah,
throughout. There's been games in finals since the start of honestly Brood War that have been
yeah,
won by cannon rushes, right? But not anymore. So, when we talk about using maps to balance, which is what Brood War does, and what we've kind of done to Protoss, but we don't really do that for the other races at this point. Right now, we are in macro map, And some of them are slightly better for one race or the other, but these are minute changes compared to what they could be. I I mean, I wouldn't hate to see a couple tournament maps that had like a good cannon rush spot in the natural. And if you played on that map against Hero, you got to be ready for it, you know? And like, it's a completely valid strategy. And if we want to take it out of the game and essentially just fully nerf Protoss, then that's fine. But we have to accept that that's what we did
So
because
feature
we for
feature them
sure did.
feature them in the KSL.
I mean, that's not a terrible idea.
That'd be fun.
Although Hero has won like a ton of those, so I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
Protoss needs any
No
help.
more, no more buffs. Yeah. Oh,
But
heroes
I mean,
crushing the dreams.
that's something kind of interesting. I think like yeah, maybe that's why Protoss has been struggling a little bit more. Are there some like high GM Protosses on Europe that if ESL had a good cannon rush map could take a cheeky extra game here or there and make something happen? I for sure know MaxPax would be doing it.
Yeah, no, I 1000% agree with your assessment. Like I think like um Protoss lost like the great minds of Protoss, most of them
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Um and uh, and yeah, and Rain is another one, right? Who like went back to Brood
Oh.
War and became a champion
Oh,
again.
I didn't
Like
even mention parting.
yeah, parting's another
Oh my
one.
god.
Yeah, yeah,
There's so
like
many.
there's so many. Yeah, like and we had all these like real like contenders. Like yeah, like, I 100% think that's why, and I think that's why we see like a poor representation of them at the top. Like, and with Terran, like yeah, there's not so many elite like Korean Terrans anymore. A few obviously good ones, 4 or 5, but maybe a little more than that, but still. But elite's a tough word though. But yeah, no, I totally agree with that assessment though. I think Protoss has suffered a lot because, and even like I think the people who could have broke through, I think like Showtime is somebody who we all expected to become like a really global elite like champion, and he did
Yeah.
great stuff here and there, and obviously he's amazing. Um, but he never had like a big stretch where he won a bunch of tournaments and was this sort of European Protoss champion. Um, or same thing even with Hero, like he won that DreamHack
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and he's a great player, but like generally he's just top fouring, which is amazing, but
I
uh,
mean, I think Protoss is the hardest race to be that consistent player
yeah,
with. Whereas like Zerg, if you are a macro god with Zerg, you're just good.
yeah,
You're just good. Yeah, you might have weaknesses still, right? Vulnerabilities, but like if you're just solid, you're going to be good. Whereas with Protoss, it's possible. We've seen stats, and yeah, you mentioned Showtime, both be at a very high level for a very long time, do some really good things. But that consistency is really hard. Protoss is so. I have always considered Protoss the most strategic of the three races. And I think it really benefits somebody who has a strategic mind, somebody who can think outside the box, like an SOS or even a hero. These guys who they'll come up with a new strategy all the time. They have like new variations and little tweaks. I saw a hero do a build that I haven't seen in years. They just he just brought it back. It's like a 2018 build that he just busts back out and just kills Dark with it. It's like, oh yeah, like he just has so many things in his brain that he can really vary his strategies. And whereas a player like Showtime, who's extremely solid, he doesn't have that kind of build variety. And I think for Protoss, that is a weakness, more so than it necessarily can be for Terran or Zerg. Although, of course, having a lot of builds can be great for those races too. But I think just for Protoss, like you need to. That's almost like the number
yeah.
one thing is if your opponent knows what you're doing, you're behind as Protoss.
Yeah, no, I think Protoss very much relies on like deceptive behavior to get their edges in the game. And that's kind of like a weird thing, right? Like to have a race that like has a hard time playing straight up.
Yeah.
Like at the highest level anyway. Yeah, that's it's a weird thing. But thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this one, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below and get subscribed. Stay tuned for the release of part 2 of this interview tomorrow, Friday, September 29th. Okay. So what are your thoughts on the new patch? Like this is a hot topic right now, obviously.
It is. It is. I haven't explored it deeply enough to have like concrete thoughts.